God is telling the people that are living in the time of the Qa'im that accept him and that recognize him, don't worry if you see something that looks off or something that's suspicious. Don't worry if you hear rumors about this da'wah. It was done intentionally. If you see something like this, disregard it and hold on tight to the righteous servant, because there's a lesson and an explanation in the end which you shall receive. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الإمام المهدينا وسلم تسليما. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brother Mahmoud Al-Irsh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's not just good to be with you here today, but it's all the goodness to listen and hear and drink from your divine pure knowledge.
God bless you, Mahmoud. And thank you for joining me here today, and the honor is mine.
Yeah, it's a great chance for me.
So, Mahmoud, today we want to talk about a very important topic, and that is the relationship that Surah Al-Kahf in particular has with the Qa'im, okay, and the end times. And we know that in the end times, as narrated in the hadiths of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, we have different characters that appear. Some are good and some are bad. From the good characters that appear are the Qa'im, the Mahdi, Imam al-Mahdi, the Yamani, the Nafs al-Zakiyah. And we have from the evil characters that appear during this time is the Sufyani, Iblis, and also the Dajjal, right? The Antichrist. And we have narrations actually from the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that state that whoever reads Surah Al-Kahf on a Friday, what happens?
He's protected from the fitna of the Dajjal.
Exactly. He's protected from the fitna of the Dajjal. So there must be information, there must be knowledge, there must be something in regards to Surah Al-Kahf that would make people be safe from the fitna of the Dajjal. And at the same time, you have other narrations from Muhammad and the family of Muhammad that say that the Kahf, Surah Al-Kahf, has a very strong relationship with the Qa'im and his companions. Now, Surah Al-Kahf, it's the 18th surah in the Quran, and in it are several different stories. But the three most famous stories that are listed in Surah Al-Kahf is the surah, the story by which the surah itself is named after. Al-Kahf means the cave. And this is a reference to the story of the seven sleepers. The seven sleepers are well-known saints in Catholicism. And so Catholic Christianity considers them to be holy individual, and they are seven in number. And in Islam, they are mentioned, and their story is mentioned in Surah Al-Kahf, and actually the surah itself, one surah out of the whole 114 surahs in the Quran, is named after these seven sleepers. And for that reason, there's an extra emphasis and importance that's placed on them. The second story that is of significance and importance in Surah Al-Kahf is the story of Moses and the righteous servant. And we're going to get to that after the story of the seven sleepers. And last but not least, the story that is highlighted that's also of extreme importance in Surah Al-Kahf is the story of Dhul Qarnayn and his journey. So let's start with the story of the seven sleepers. In short, what is their story? Their story is that they were seven youth. Some narrations state that they were noblemen, and I'm talking now from Islamic sources as well as Christian sources. And they used to work in government positions, high government positions. They had access to the emperor, the Roman emperor, and it was during a time after the crucifixion. And after the passing of Jesus Christ, and it was before the time of the coming of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and so they were caught. Also, it was also a time that was before the adoption of Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire. And so we're dealing with the successors of Nero. They're still in power. They had destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. They hate Christians. There was a time where they were doing vicious things to anybody whom they found out to be Christian. Christianity was spreading throughout the Roman Empire, and people were beginning to abandon the gods of the Romans and the Greeks, the worship of Jupiter, the worship of Zeus and Mars and other false deities and false religions. And they were moving towards belief in monotheism and accepting Jesus as their Messiah. And so these guys they were repelled and disgusted by the actions of the emperor and his soldiers. The tyrant of that time was taking Christians, and he was basically stripping them of all their belongings. They were raping their women. They were killing them unless they would go back off their faith. And the Christian martyrs during that time, they had such extreme faith in Jesus Christ that they would refuse. They would choose death always instead of being apostates and going back on the faith. So they had various methods of torturing these Christians. Some of them they would bring these large pots of oil, and they would burn it, basically heat it up until it became boiling, and then they would tie the Christians to some sort of pole, and they would drop them down into the burning, slowly make them come down into the burning oil, and pull them back up again, and it would just be a skeleton. All their flesh would have melted off, and their bones, fell apart in the burning oil. Nero was famous for turning the Christians into human candles and basically, impaling them and hanging them on the sides of the streets in Rome, and lighting them with gas in order that they light up the streets. Yeah, they become street lights. And so it was a horrific time to be living in. And the emperor was hell-bent on forcing everybody to make sacrifices, bring sacrifices to the altar in order that he may, the altars of the false gods, in order that he may expose who is really a Christian, because the Christians also at that time, they were practicing taqiyya. They were hiding their faith unless they were basically found out, in order that they may reach more and more people and propagate the faith, and in order that they don't get killed. And so that was the time period that they were living in. That was the scene. That was the location. And we and when I talk about the Roman Empire, I'm not just talking in Europe. I'm talking also in Turkey and the Middle East. They were occupying the entire region. And it's been a great mystery, which people haven't been able to confirm for sure where is the exact location that the seven sleepers lived in, and where is the location of the cave itself. Some people say Turkey, other people say Jordan, but it's still it hasn't been revealed by the Mahdi alayhi salam. And so they decide that they want to escape working for this evil emperor. And they are hiding their belief as Christians. And so they decide one day, they take their dog and they retreat and they go to the cave. They find this cave and they hide there. And they hide there because they don't want to be in a society that worships other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They only believed in obeying the representative of God. They believed in the supremacy of God. And they didn't want to, be serving the tyrant. So they disbelieved in the tyrant. They believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because the society was following the man-made laws from the devil, which was the laws of the tyrant oppressor who is oppressing the people of God, they decided that they're going to go and retreat to this cave so they can hide away from from the oppression that they're undergoing and from serving this guy. They didn't know what it is that they were going to do, but they knew that they would never go back. And they were led by, they had a leader, his name was Maximilianus, and they basically felt tired in the cave after retreating to it, and they end up falling asleep. And for them, it felt like they were only falling asleep for a night, but in reality, they fell asleep for many, 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 many years.
309 years.
Yeah. 309 years, according to some narrations, and according to the implication that's in the Quran, it was 300 years plus 9. And they end up waking up and they find themselves in a different world. They're unaware that so much time has passed, but they feel hungry, but they look the same. They haven't aged. Their hair hasn't grown longer. It hasn't grown white. They look at each other. They see themselves the same, preserved in the same condition as it was the day that they went into the cave. And so they walk out of the cave, they look around, but they're scared because they don't want the tyrant, who they think is still alive, and his armies to find them. And so they nominate one of the youth, and he was the guy who was in charge of the Beit al-Mal, the House of Funds. He was the one that kept the hold of the money that the group owned, Yamlicha. And Yamlicha ends up going down to the city disguised. He wraps like a shawl over his head, and he kind of goes down into the city, him and Maximilianus, in order to check out and see if they're but it was over 2 stages actually. But long story short, Yamlicha, he goes into town to buy some things. The people don't accept his money that he has. They say this is an old currency. It's not even in use now. He says, "What are you talking about?" The people over there tell him that basically you're living in this year. He's freaking out. He starts asking about, what are you talking about? How is this possible? What about this emperor? What about that person? He realizes that they've been transported, to a different world. They've been transported to the future, many, many years after the day that they went into the cave, and everybody that he knows has now passed from the world with the exception of his companions. He rushes back to the cave, and he informs the companions, the 7 sleepers. At the same time, all of the people in the city, they start talking about this man that appeared with this old currency, and that was claiming that they were living in a different age, and all of this, and word spreads until it gets to the king. And the king who is there is a Christian king. He's a righteous king who is appointed by God, and he takes the whole city, and they go to the cave of the seven sleepers, where they meet them over there. And they all celebrate it as a great miracle that these men, because of their faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and because they retreated from society, and because they took the cave as a shelter, and because they had faith that God does not misguide those who are sincerely looking for Him, and because they believed in Jesus Christ, God protected them from death and sent them forward, 309 years later. And after all of the city honors them and they witness them as a miracle, and they all hear their testimony, they're offered, a place in the city and to please come down. And the seven sleepers decide that, no, they want to go back into their cave, and that's what they do. They go back in the cave, and this time they pass away. They lay back down to fall asleep, but this time they pass away. And then the king, he basically shuts the cave and preserves it, and it becomes like a tomb for them, but at the same time a great miracle. And the relationship that it has with the Qa'im and its companions, and why it is a protection from the fitna of the Antichrist, is because obviously that which is taking place in the time of the Antichrist, in the time of the Mahdi, in terms of the political atmosphere and that which is going on in the world, parallels exactly what was taking place back in the day. In the time of the seven sleepers, the people were rejecting the proofs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They were appointing their own ruler. They were living, being ruled by tyrants. And in this day and age, the entire planet is living and being ruled by tyrants and suffering from their decisions, while those who are appointed from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are oppressed. The similitude of the cave in Surah Al-Kahf, it is talking about that cave which the seven sleepers went into, but it also has a hidden meaning. And the cave's hidden meaning is the Qa'im. The Qa'im is the cave, and the seven sleepers are the companions of the cave, meaning they're the companions of the Qa'im. And even there's a little bit of a wink or nod to this notion in the narrations, where it states that some of the companions of the Qa'im whom are resurrected and return in the time of the Qa'im are these seven sleepers. When the Qa'im in one narration appears, he appears with him, and he has with him the seven sleepers. And so the Qa'im is the cave. It's an allegory for him, and the sleepers are the companions of the cave. When the companions of the cave, the Ansar of the Qa'im, retreat and go away from society in order that they may take the Qa'im and his da'wah as a shelter, the supremacy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and declare themselves innocent from the tyrants that are existing in society today, what happens? The Quran says that God spreads for them from His mercy, and they obtain the knowledge and the favor of God by taking refuge and shelter with the Qa'im. Exactly. And what does it say in English that the happens to them when they take shelter with the cave?
God sustains your matter and guides you on your way.
And prepares you. Exactly. So that's what happens. In the time of the Qa'im, the companions, they retreat from society, they meet up with the Qa'im, they make hijrah to him, they abandon, declare themselves innocent, and they take him as a refuge, and God sustains them, and God prepares them for what is to come. What is to come? That state that they will see, that they will wake up to, and they will find, and that was the seven sleepers, they found that they were living in a Christian state. A state now that went from being anti-followers of Jesus to pro-followers of Jesus. a state that went from being unjust to a state that was just and had a righteous king instead of an oppressor. Same thing happens with the companions of the cave in the time of the Qa'im. God prepares for them a way, and they end up seeing a divine just state, a state even though it's unbelievable, even though nobody understands how it will happen, and it takes place by a miraculous way. Those companions of the Qa'im will see a just state in their lifetime in the same way that the seven sleepers saw a just state, even if it meant that God had to prolong their age for 309 years. The same thing applies to the Qa'im and his companions. And there's some narrations which even mention that the Prophet swearing and saying basically that even if God had to stretch out a day so long, that he would do so in order that the earth be filled with justice and equity as it was filled with injustice and inequity, etc. So that's in terms of the companions of the cave, and the first story and its relationship with the companions of the Qa'im and the Qa'im. The second story that we have is the story of Moses and the righteous servant. Basically, Moses, he's told by God that he has to go on a journey. And where does he go? He goes to the Majma al-Bahrain, the meeting point of the two seas. And this is also a place that many people have sought to search out, and they didn't know exactly where it is. Some people have said that it is in the Red Sea. Other people said it's the Mediterranean Sea. Some people say that it's this country. Other people say that it's that country. At that country, some people say, but at the end of the day, it has remained a mystery that only the Mahdi and the Qa'im will reveal when the time is right. And so he meets this righteous servant. When he meets this righteous servant, there's life that's surrounding him. And their fish that they had brought with them for food that was once dead springs to life and goes swimming into the sea. And this righteous servant, who's a source of life, and everybody who's around him is filled with life, begins to teach Moses several important lessons, 3 in total. And basically, Moses is tested at the very beginning with this righteous servant by being patient and not disbelieving and not disobeying. The righteous servant emphasizes to Moses that in order to accompany him and learn from him, he has to be patient and to not object to anything that he sees. Okay? So it's patience, 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 and then submission. This is the message of the righteous servant to Moses. And Moses promises that he's going to do so. And they go on their journey. And at the first point, they reach these poor people who are in a ship. And they ask the poor people that have the ship for a ride. And they welcome them on the ship. And the ship begins to sail at sea. And once the ship takes off, Moses looks down and he finds that the righteous servant begins to basically put a hole in the ship. He begins to damage it. And Moses immediately objects. He says, "What are you doing? These people were extremely nice to us. Is this how you repay good doers? How could you do this? Are you trying to sink the ship with its people? Are you trying to destroy them?"
Yeah.
Now pay attention to that. What were you going to say?
Yeah, if anybody in that situation, they will have the same reaction if they don't know except the apparent. Moses was judging by the apparent that these are nice people, and why is he harming them? Because he thinks he knows more than the righteous servant. That's why he said what he said.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what he was tested in, with submission. And part of submission is to have faith, more faith in the messenger or the representative of God than your own self. Part of taslim is that you trust the Imam's eyes more than you trust your own eyes. You trust his mind more than you trust your own. You let him think for you, and you let him see for you, and you let him hear for you. You're trusting the messenger's senses more than you're trusting your own. And so the righteous servant continues on the journey after that. He tells him, look, Moses, you've already objected. Did I not tell you that you're not going to be able to handle it? And Moses repents. He says, I'm not going to do it again. And then they continue their journey. And they get to a second point where they see a child and he's playing. And the righteous servant goes over as Moses is admiring this little boy and thinking about how cute he is and all of that. And the righteous servant goes up to him, and the narrations state that he bashes his head in and slaughters him. And so this murder takes place now, where Moses is with the righteous servant, and the righteous servant just murdered somebody, but not just anybody, a person who did not have a sin, and a child at that who had not even reached the age of being held accountable for their actions. And so this was a grave sin in Judaism. It was a total contradiction to the teachings and the Torah, which came down upon Moses and what he had heard directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he freaked out and he says, have you killed a soul or a self without any sin? Surely you have come forward with an abomination. Surely you've committed a great abomination. And the righteous servant ends up telling him, did we not go through this already? Did you not promise that you were not going to object? Did God not send you to me? Did God not command you to obey me and to walk with me? I told you to remain silent and not object. And here you are objecting for a second time. I told you that you can't handle this. Moses then, he says to him, please forgive me, Master. Let me continue to walk by you and learn from you. And I swear that if I object again, you can release me. Okay? And don't let me accompany you any further. I promise you I will never object again. And so the journey continues. And what takes place after that is that they reach this city. And the city has people in there that are non-believers, that are extremely nasty. And they won't give the righteous servant or Moses or his youth, who's accompanying them on the journey, Joshua, son of Nun, with any food to eat. And they were growing tired. And every time they would ask somebody for shelter, they would say no. Every time they would ask somebody for water, they would say no. Every time they'd ask somebody for food, they would be rejected and spit on and abused. And so finally, the righteous servant sees this wall that's damaged in the city, and he runs over there and he begins to fix the wall. And Moses looks over at the righteous servant, and as he's in a state of annoyance, he says to him, you could have charged those people for fixing that wall after the way that they treated us. And at that point, the righteous servant turns towards Moses and he says to him, this is the end of our journey. You've objected for a third time, no more. And that, in summary, is the story, except that in the end of it, the righteous servant, obviously, he reveals the hidden lessons behind and the reasons behind everything. So he says, you can't accompany me anymore, but I'm going to reveal to you why I did the things that I did. And then he says, as far as the ship goes, there was a tyrannical king who was coming by, and he was seizing all of the ships. And because these people were miskeen and they were righteous people, I wanted to damage it. So that way, when the tyrant comes through, he wouldn't want their ship. And as for the boy that I killed, I know that he was going to grow up to be a tyrant and to oppress his parents. And for that reason, I killed him. in order that God may replace his parents with a seed that is righteous. And he said, and as far as the wall, there was a treasure under it, and it belonged to 2 orphans in the city. And I wanted to repair the wall in order that I may protect that treasure for them and safeguard it, so that nobody else from the city brings it forward. And the comparison that it has, this story, it also has a comparison or a lesson in it, a parallel with the Qa'im and his companions. A very important one, which will help all those whom live in the time of the Qa'im and live in the time of the Dajjal to avoid the Dajjal by having success, by accompanying the Qa'im and not basically disbelieving or running away from him at one point. The likeness between Moses and the righteous servant is the likeness between the Qa'im and the companions. The companions of the Qa'im, they are required to be patient with their journey with the Qa'im and to be submissive and to not question him. In the same way that Moses was required to be submissive and not question the decisions that the righteous servant was making. And those 3 incidents that took place with Moses and the righteous servant will also take place in the da'wah of the Qa'im. And the narrations of Muhammad and the family of Muhammad, as well as Ahmad Hassan salam, he spoke about these matters. And he said that in the time of the Qa'im, there will be damage that will take place to the ship. And the ship will belong to the companions of the Qa'im. And the ship is the community of the Qa'im. The community of the Qa'im, or the companions of the Qa'im, the da'wah of the companions of the Qa'im will be damaged. So in the apparent, those tyrants who are looking from the outside, and even the people on the ship, will see that there's something wrong with this da'wah, or they will think that there's something wrong with this da'wah. But in reality, the thing that was, there's nothing wrong with the da'wah, but it was just damaged intentionally by the Qa'im in order to protect it from tyrants recognizing that this is the true Qa'im and the true da'wah of the Qa'im. So he ruins the reputation of the da'wah, or he does something to make people think we don't have anything to worry about in terms of this da'wah. It's a false da'wah. Yeah. Do you understand?
Yeah.
And all of that is done to preserve the lives of the Qa'im and the companions and to allow the religion to propagate. So it's as if God is telling the people that are living in the time of the Qa'im that accept him and that recognize him, don't worry if you see something that looks off or something that's suspicious. Don't worry if you hear rumors about this da'wah. It was done intentionally. Perhaps it was companions of the Qa'im that were ordered to do so, or the Qa'im reveals and pushes people to reveal their true selves in order that they may come out. God causes them to do something that will damage the da'wah and its reputation. If you see something like this, disregard it and hold on tight to the righteous servant, because there's a lesson and an explanation in the end which you shall receive. The second story, Imam Ahmad Hassan salam and the Ahl Bayt alayhim salam also said will take place with the Qa'im. The Qa'im, the righteous servant, kills a boy who has no sin, and the narrations of the Ahl Bayt stated that the Qa'im will be with his companions, and there will be a man who is standing above the Qa'im, at the head of the Qa'im. He's perceived to be perhaps a boss of the Qa'im, and he's commanding the people and commanding the people left and right ahead of the Qa'im. And then the narration states that the Qa'im says to turn that man around.
Yeah.
And then when he's turned around, he's killed for no sin that is known to the people. If that happens, then don't disbelieve in the Qa'im. If there are people that are in the da'wah that the Qa'im ends up having a confrontation with, or he ends up excommunicating, or he ends up banishing, or ends up discrediting, no matter what happens, hold on to the Qa'im. The narration states that this person who is at the head of the Qa'im and that is giving people orders left and right ahead of the Qa'im, that when the Qa'im kills him, nothing remains between the East and the West except that they fear the Qa'im. So that means that this individual who was killed by the Qa'im, according to the narration, regardless of what the true meaning of killing is, this person who was killed by the Qa'im, he is perceived as being somebody extremely important, somebody who is not normal, somebody whom the companions would have never expected that the Qa'im in a million years, they would have never expected that he fight against him.
SubhanAllah, this hadith, that the narration that says that the Qa'im will rule by the rule of David, means he will give judgment without needing a proof or evidence why he did so.
Exactly. He rules by the Holy Spirit. And so he judges his companions by the disbelief that he knows that they will commit, and what he knows is in their hearts rather than something that they had committed. And there's also other narrations that state that the matter of the Qa'im is prolonged, so it's not just like something where the Mahdi appears and then all of a sudden there's like wars and his companions magically appear and all of this. No, the da'wah of the Qa'im, it's prolonged. He has a da'wah for a very long time. His path with his companions is extended until the closest of closest people to him become those who bear the greatest enmity towards him. The closest of closest people to him become those who hate him the most and seek to fight him. And so these are all warnings, and it's warnings that are in the Surah Al-Kahf, that if you're with the Qa'im and he ever condemns somebody, even if they are the closest of closest people to him, even if they are known to be as innocent of a child, even if you loved them so much, like Moses admired this youth, and you didn't know that they had committed any sin and you see them as being blameless or perhaps even oppressed, don't ever fall in that mistake of questioning the Qa'im. Hold on tight to his judgment because he knows best what's in the people. And then the third story that happens with Moses and the righteous servant also replicates itself in the time of the Qa'im, and that is the wall. And the wall in the time of the Qa'im has a treasure underneath it, and that treasure is the treasure that the Qa'im will bring out, and that treasure is the 27 letters of knowledge that he will spread amongst the people that were previously unknown. And so that is also a forewarning to tell the people that if the Qa'im brings out knowledge, and he brings out that knowledge by doing works which are contradictory to logic, like fixing the wall, or in its apparent it is helping oppressors, or in its apparent it is something which goes against the jurisprudence or goes against the laws of God, don't ever question him. If trust his intellect, trust that God is with him, trust the Spirit that's with him, and trust his eyes rather than your own eyes and your own mind and your own logic. And then finally we have in Surah Al-Kahf the story of Zulqarnain and his journey. And basically Zulqarnain, he is a king who is appointed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he's also a prophet. And the proof that he's a prophet is the fact that in the Quran, God is speaking to him. He's inspiring him and telling him, "Oh, Zulkarnain, go do this. Oh, Zulkarnain, go do that." And so obviously he has communication with God. And so he is one of the prophets. He's a messenger. And the story of Zulkarnain, in short, is that he's a righteous king and he's given great authority. Authority that resembles the authority that was given to Solomon in terms of the earth and his ability to conquer. But he's not given necessarily because Solomon had a greater kingdom, and that is because Solomon had knowledge of the language of the animals, and he could control the wind and different things like this. So Zulkarnain, he didn't have that, but he had great knowledge and ability, and he was able to travel in the land. And he makes many pit stops from the rising sun from the place of the rising of the sun to the place of the setting of the sun, and everything that is in between. And people for many years have been dumbfounded in regards and confused in regards to the description of the journey that Zulkarnain undertook. They've tried to map out where are these places and who are these people and creatures that he encounters, because also he encounters Gog and Magog in there, and he's responsible for building a wall. And they've guessed everything from it being, that the wall of Zulkarnain exists in Russia, to it being the Great Wall of China, to other locations on the earth. And they've also, some people have written books and theorized about the fact that it was an interstellar journey or a space journey that took place. And so, in short, Zulkarnain, he is given ability by God to travel and to conquer. He's on a quest, according to the narrations. His quest that he's on is to find the fountain of youth, or the tree of life, that source which would grant him everlasting youth and life. And he had with him as a companion another prophet, Prophet Jeremiah, or Al-Khidr. And Al-Khidr stumbles across the fountain of youth while he doesn't. And the reason that's given in the narrations is because Zulkarnain was looking for it, and the fountain of youth made itself known only to those who were not looking for it. You can only find the fountain of youth if you actually don't want to live forever. It's kind of this paradox. But all those who are searching for eternal youth are unable to find it. And so if you want to die and you want to meet God, God might make you stumble across the fountain of youth. But if you are actually greedy and want to remain in the earth forever, then you will never be shown where the fountain of youth is. It's an impossibility to find it. And so Al-Khidr stumbles across it. He drinks from it unknowingly. He didn't even know it was the fountain of youth. He just thought it was water. He drinks from it, and he ends up, basically after that point, giving life to everything that's around him, earning the nickname Al-Khidr because of that, the green man, and also, staying alive for a very long time period. And the person that drinks from the fountain of youth, basically, they stay alive until they will to die themselves, and then they can die. So their soul will leave their body willingly instead of unwillingly. But if they don't want to leave, then no matter what happens, if they're hit by a car, if they fall from a high place, if they're hit by a sword, struck by a sword, then their body automatically regenerates itself. And so basically Zulkarnain, he travels, and during his traveling, he encounters different people. And some people that can barely speak a word, and there's other people that are seeking his help in certain things. They say that Gog and Magog are terrorizing them, and to build between us and them a wall to protect us. And that's one of the accomplishments that Zulkarnain accomplishes, and that is that he builds this wall between the disbelieving people and between the believing people. The people that believed in Zulkarnain and the people that rejected and disbelieved in Zulkarnain. And so the similitude and the comparison that can be drawn here and is drawn by the family of Muhammad in regards to the story of Zulkarnain and the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad is that he is given that which Zulkarnain was given. Zulkarnain is given ability in the land, the Qa'im is given ability in the land. Zulkarnain is inspired by God, the Qa'im is inspired by God. Zulkarnain builds a wall that separates between the disbelieving people and the believing people. The Qa'im also builds a divine just state and establishes a da'wah that separates between the people of God that believe in the supremacy of God and all those who believe in the supremacy of man. And this wall is erected and it separates between all those who are like Gog and Magog and those who are from the people of God. God also grants Zulkarnain absolute authority. He tells him at one point when he encounters the people, God tells him, as for these people, you are free to do whatever you want with them. If you want to basically punish them, then punish them. And if you want to do good to them, then do good to them. It's up to you. The matter is in your hands. As such, God places the matter of his servants in the hands of the Qa'im, for everybody on the earth has been condemned with sin, and so the Qa'im has the choice as he encounters the people of the earth to either punish them for their sins that they are deserving of punishment for, or to forgive them their sins. The Qa'im has the ability to forgive sins and to condemn people and basically establish the punishment upon them for their sins. So the Qa'im, nobody can blame him for anything, and that's one of the things that the narrations from the family of Muhammad say about the Qa'im, that no matter what he does, even if it's contradictory to the people's logic or to the jurisprudence, he's not to be blamed, nor is he condemned by anybody on the earth. And so the story of Surah Al-Kahf, the stories in Surah Al-Kahf are extremely important for all those who seek to prepare themselves for the path and the journey, towards the Qa'im of the family of Muhammad, and for all those who seek to be a part of God's people that are protected behind the walls of Zulkarnain against the enemies from Gog and Magog, for all those who seek to draw and see the divine just state and take the cave as a shelter. The stories that are in the Surah Al-Kahf will serve as a reminder.
SubhanAllah. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ meant, that Surah Al-Kahf protects from the fitna, not as a spell, but as understanding at the time of the fitna of the Dajjal, how it's going to be, understanding these stories. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the Quran says many times, Mahmoud, it asks like the believer who's reading it, and God talks about the believer, and he says, in the Quran, do they not contemplate over the words? Do they not think? Do they not have a mind? And do they not understand? And so what's required of a person in regards to the Quran is that as they're reading the words, that they understand them. That is where the power of the Quran lies. The Quran is of no benefit if a person is reciting it and repeating letters and phrases and words without him being consciously aware of its meaning. And it's the meaning that has all of the importance. And so reading Surah Al-Kahf on a Friday, like some people do, and they're not even consciously aware of what it is that they're reading, and they don't think about it, serves as no protection whatsoever. It actually might end up being a curse on them, because then they'll go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala having been deceived by the Dajjal and being a follower of the Dajjal or the Antichrist. And at the same time, having had access to and read every Friday the Surah Al-Kahf. So what is their excuse then? They read the words, but they were like animals, like cattle, rather more astray, or like the donkey who's holding on its back, many books and not benefiting him in any way, shape, or form. So it's all about the meaning. It's all about extracting the wisdom from the stories.
SubhanAllah, even the day Friday, why Al-Kahf on Friday? Friday is known to be, it's the day of the Imam Mahdi. So it's as if it's referring to, if you want to know Imam Mahdi, the time of his rising, the Qa'im that will take you, you have to understand these stories.
Exactly. Yom al-Jum'ah.
Al-Jum'ah.
Al-Jum'ah is for the day of the gathering.
Yeah.
That is the day of the gathering of the companions of the Mahdi, the companions of the Qa'im.
SubhanAllah.
God bless you. It's been an extreme pleasure to have you here, Mahmoud, and to have this discussion with you. And inshallah, on many future episodes to come, you'll join me.
Thank you so much. This was an amazing episode. Nobody ever has explained the stories in Surah Al-Kahf in that way, except somebody who knows the Quran from God Himself.
God bless you.
Thank you so much.